Hello and welcome to World News Today. Here are the top breaking stories for you. Donald Trump slams impeachment inquiry as another witch hunt. What Trump said publicly is damning enough for impeachment. What happens next in impeachment inquiry? UK Supreme Court rules Prime Minister Boris Johnson's parliament suspension was unlawful. President Trump lashed out at Democrats the morning after Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced a formal impeachment inquiry. There has been no president in the history of the country who has been treated so badly as I have. The Democrats are frozen with hatred and fear. He tweeted on Wednesday, "They got nothing done." He added, "This should never be allowed to happen to another president." Witch hunt. Our republic endures because of the wisdom of our constitution enshrined in three co-equal branches that act as checks and balances, Pelosi said late Tuesday in the Capitol. The president must be held accountable. No one is above the law. Pelosi, who had rejected moving forward with impeachment for months, made the announcement after Trump admitted that he had spoken to Ukraine's president about looking into former Vice President Joe Biden, a leading candidate for the Democratic presidential nomination. Just weeks after withholding military aid to the country, Trump has denied any wrongdoing. Pelosi's announcement followed a wave of support for impeachment from House Democrats on Tuesday in response to the Ukraine revelations. More than three-quarters of the House Democratic caucus now support the start of an impeachment inquiry. Trump also slammed Democrats minutes after Pelosi announced the impeachment proceeding. Such an important day at the United Nations, so much work and so much success, and the Democrats purposely had to ruin and demean it with more breaking news witch hunt garbage. So bad for our country. He tweeted Tuesday night, "The president has confirmed he brought up Biden during a July call to Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, but denied pressing the leader to look into the Democratic frontrunner." Trump has also said he held up aid because he wanted other countries to contribute more funds to help Ukraine. What President Trump has admitted publicly about pressuring Ukraine to get information on a political adversary during a private call is damning enough to justify impeachment proceedings. Schiff, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, is leading just one of 6 impeachment investigations into Mr. Trump, they called, during which Mr. Trump talked about former Vice President and 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden and his son Hunter, is the subject of a whistleblower's complaint which the intelligence community inspector general found both credible and of urgent concern. "That is horrible abuse of the oath of office," said Schiff of the president's withholding of military aid to Ukraine before his call with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. What the president has already admitted, the president's acknowledgement of withholding Ukraine aid, the fact that he would not share with leaders of his own party like Mitch McConnell the justification, the fact that when this came to light, he has now given shifting explanations for why he withheld the aid. I think all the facts which are uncontested at this point compel us to move down the path of formal impeachment inquiry. Schiff said as a result of revelations, the complaint was supposed to be turned over to the House Intelligence Committee, but the acting director of National Intelligence, Joseph McQuarrie, has declined to submit the complaint to the committee because he determined that it was not of urgent concern. White House and intelligence agencies are now discussing ways to share information from the original complaint with lawmakers. Schiff said the whistleblower now wants to testify before his committee and said he wrote a letter to attorneys representing the individual to request a voluntary interview on Thursday. The Democrat noted, however, the whistleblower is not the sum total of the story. suggesting that White House associates like Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani admitted that he was also pressuring Ukraine to manufacture dirt on Joe Biden. There may have been many interactions by the president or people like Rudy Giuliani to apply this pressure campaign, even as the president of the United States withheld vital military aid to an ally that's at war with Russia. Said Schiff, the national security of the United States is very much at risk here, he added. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi decried the president's most recent actions as a betrayal of his oath of office as she formally launched a formal impeachment inquiry of Mr. Trump. Schiff said the lawmakers are now going to move expeditiously, saying there's no reason to wait for the release of the complaint to start impeachment proceedings. For now, Mr. Trump maintains that a transcript of the call with Zelensky set to be released by the White House on Tuesday will exonerate him from any wrongdoing. He described the call as perfect and said there was no quid pro quo during the conversation. Schiff contends, however, that the transcript alone will not factor into lawmakers' decision-making process. What the president has already admitted is all we need to know, he said. Behind closed doors, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi did not specify to her colleagues on Tuesday precisely how the impeachment inquiry will play out or divvy up tasks for each of the committees to take on from here. In part, that's by design. Each of the 6 House committees, Judiciary, Intelligence, Ways and Means, Financial Services, Oversight and Foreign Affairs will continue with their investigations, looking at different elements of Donald Trump's presidency, his past and his businesses. These committees monthly ago sorted out the different areas they are investigating, and many of the investigations are still charging ahead or have their fights tied up in court. If the Democrats decide to impeach Trump, the Democrats on these committees will each provide their input over what they believe should be included in articles of impeachment, which will be introduced by House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler, a New York Democrat, though Pelosi will have the ultimate say on this decision. Then the House Judiciary Committee will consider the articles of impeachment resolution and schedule a vote on it. If it passes the House panel, then the full House is expected to take it up. If a majority of House members vote for the resolution, then the House will have impeached Trump. To convict the president and remove him from office, it would require support from a 2/3 majority of the Senate, a highly unlikely proposition. Said in the end, what's changed? Not a whole lot, other than the Speaker formally endorsing an impeachment inquiry. But for the past couple months, the House Judiciary Committee has made the case that it was already conducting an impeachment inquiry with the goal of deciding whether to vote on articles of impeachment. There will not be a separate vote to open up an impeachment inquiry. Democrats say Pelosi would not give a time frame for this process, but she told her colleagues it would be done expeditiously, and Nadler has hoped to conclude it by the end of the year. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson suffered a historic blow Tuesday after the country's top court ruled it was unlawful for him to suspend Parliament at a time of constitutional crisis over Brexit. In a day of high drama, 11 justices of the UK Supreme Court ruled unanimously that Johnson's advice to Queen Elizabeth II ahead of the suspension was unlawful, void and of no effect. Under the UK's political system, the Prime Minister goes through the formality of advising the Queen ahead of suspending Parliament after every legislative cycle. However, the court ruled that Johnson's suspension, officially called prorogation, was unlawful because it was stopped lawmakers from scrutinizing the government's Brexit plans. The effect upon the fundamentals of our democracy was extreme, the court's president Brenda Hale, addressed formally as Lady Hale, told the court Tuesday. It had the effect of frustrating or preventing the ability of Parliament to carry out its constitutional functions without reasonable justification. The ruling means Parliament is no longer suspended. John Beckrow, Speaker of the House of Commons, told reporters he planned for the legislature to sit again as early as Wednesday morning. Several lawmakers said they would be heading back to London to take their seats, with at least one, the Conservative Tom Tugendhat, tweeting a photo of himself after 2 days ruling in the House of Commons already. The running has also caused opponents of Johnson, who is currently in New York attending the United Nations General Assembly, to ramp up calls for his resignation. Speaking from New York, the Prime Minister said that "I strongly disagree and I don't think it's right," but conceded that he would respect the decision. Unmoved by the verdict, he restarted this promise to take the UK out of European Union by the end of next month. Johnson has been Prime Minister less than 2 months and has staked his leadership on a promise to leave the European Union on October 31st with or without deal. Supporters see this policy as a solution to the Brexit impasse that has gripped the nation since it voted to leave the European Union in referendum in 2016. However, experts say Johnson's approach risks a no-deal Brexit, which the government's own worst-case scenario forecasts say could bring economic pain, civil unrest, and shortage of food. Tuesday's court case centers around Johnson's decision to suspend Parliament for 5 weeks until October 14. It essentially says that Johnson did this to stop lawmakers from blocking his Brexit plans. This allegation has been widespread among opponents and independent observers. That's all from now. Hope you enjoyed our coverage. Hope to see you later. Thank you very much.